Hey guys, and you're welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 8 of the best ranked decks that you can expect to see, as well as play in ranked to climb to master or even one of the top 10k, top 5k, maybe even top 100. So if you're excited, don't forget to smash that like button, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on weekly videos like this one, as well as other content here on the channel. And with that, let's start with our first deck list in today's video, and that's going to be Buzzwell EX. Now with every deck that I'm going to share with you guys today, there's going to be a ton of variations, but for today's sake, we're just going to focus on the variation on the screen. And this one you could think of as Toxic Guzzlord, where the idea is you poison your opponents with either Poison Barb on your Nihilego, Celesteela, or even Guzzlord, or potentially even using the attack from your Najadil, poison your opponent's active Pokemon, and then play up to 2 Nihilegos on the bench to then raise the toxic damage to 30. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but by the time it is your opponent's next turn, they would have taken 60 damage on that poisoned active Pokemon. Now, if you're doing the math on this, 60 plus something like a Tyrannical Hole comes out to 180, which honestly just wins games at that point. There's nothing stopping your Buzzwell EX's Tyrannical Hole from sweeping with a few proper poisoned setups. In order to ramp your Guzzlord, you have your Lusamine. However, you do need your opponent to have at least 1 prize point on the board. Oftentimes myself and I see other players make this mistake where they try to get pretty aggressive early on, only to find out Lusamine doesn't do a thing because they don't have, or their opponent rather, doesn't have a single prize point. We do have Disruption in this deck with the means of Mars and Sabrina, and also a nice confirm with Cyrus right here. If you're going for that final blow with something in their backline, because if they get poisoned, they're more likely to retreat. So Cyrus adds a lot of value to this type of deck. But I think the real star in this deck has to be Celesteela. It is the Ultra Thrusters, man. Just to be able to retreat literally any of these Pokemon for free, it's as if the retreat cost just doesn't matter as long as you have a Celesteela on the board. So because of that, Ultra Beasts are still very, very good, and Guzzlord is doing really well in the ranked ladder, but not as good as the other 7 in today's video. So let's hop into the next one we're going to talk about, and that is the new and improved Garchomp EX, and it's only improved because we added a Sylveon EX. Now, when you look at this deck, you might be like, well, that seems pretty clunky, right? It's bound to brick. I mean, every deck is really bound to brick, but this one just looks like it's bound to brick. However, Sylveon EX complements that idea, whereas if you start with, an Eevee or even a Gibble, rather, it allows you to have a 3rd Professor Research in your deck. So the idea is if you have a Skullfalsa or something, you're much more likely to find your evolutions for Garchomp, for your Rampardos to get them online via your Professor Research, or even a Sylveon EX. This only runs fighting energy. So again, Sylveon EX is only there to act as a 3rd Professor Research. And if you think that's kind of wacky, it's not the only deck that does that in today's top 8. There's so many others that are taking advantage of this draw engine via Sylveon EX, and they are crushing their games. A lot of them, in fact, the #1 ranked player, I don't know if they still run this deck, but they were running a variation where they only use Sylveon EX as a draw engine. So you definitely can take full advantage of this card and help you find the cards like Rare Candy, like I said, the evolutions, to just close out games very, very fast. And the thing that's really nice about this deck is if you do luckily get your, say, Garchomp EX online rather fast, if you're going first, a lot of this meta is revolving around Eevee, and they evolve into Flareons, Leafeons, you name it, right? But if you're able to get into a Garchomp EX and linear attack their Eevee in their active spot, well, they are super weak into fighting types, which means you're super effective, dealing up to 70 damage, often knocking out their Eevee before they can get online with any other card in their arsenal. So Garchomp is eating rather well this set. Now let's talk about the Yellow Chicken. I think this set might be the best set for Oricorio, the Yellow Chicken that has Safeguard that prevents EX Pokemon from attacking. Honestly, I say that with every set, but every set we get with new EX Pokemon that just seems so OP and you just can't defeat them. This Yellow Chicken comes in with its little pom-poms and are like, yo, let me at them, let me at them. So I'm very happy that they're still in here. They're still in the top 8. They're still doing wonderful things in the meta. In fact, the #1 deck in today's video actually has a variant that I guess I can discuss with you guys that has Oricorio in it. However, the number one deck typically doesn't run the Oricorio, but it goes to show you it's a very flexible card. This one's running a Zeraora and a Sylveon, and the idea is Zeraora can ramp itself, often from the bench, so that way if you lead with something like Oricorio and type Nolans, let's say you're going first or even second, it doesn't matter. The following turn, you can use your Dawn here to take that energy from Zeraora and put it onto your Sylveon, which then leads to a 100 damaging move, Brave Buddies, or you can give it to your Oricorio that can just start smacking your opponent for 50, which is pretty solid. All in all, this is a very good deck, and I'd say it's budget friendly. There's no EXs here. The most expensive card is a 3 diamond, three diamonds, your Oricorios, your Zeraoras, and your Sylveons, right? But like if you don't have those engines, then you're probably not playing this deck. But if you do have those cards, then the rest of the most expensive cards are just 2 diamonds, right? There's the supporter card. So I think this is probably the most budget friendly, free to play, I guess, if you will, deck, because all these cards are tradable right now. So for those of you that are struggling on opening these new packs and finding the Flareons and all the new cards, then this might be the deck that you want to use to climb rank. Now let's move up to the Swole Beast himself. Yep, he's still here. Buzzwell EX, an amazing card, especially with the Celesteela engine. There's just nothing you can do once this gets going. It's very hard to combat this giant mosquito that can just punch you and pick up 3 points rather quickly. We have a single copy of Kartana and Pheromosa, and it's exactly how you'd expect it. The thing that I find very fascinating about this variant is it's running Repel, and I think Repel's really good because it counters Oricorio. Let's say there's an opponent that is they have a single Oricorio, or even the deck list that we just went into. If we have at least 2 points on the board, or even 1 point or something, and we attacked with a Pheromosa to tag something, we have a Cyrus to bring that in. So all we have to do really is repel their active Oricorio, knock out that next Pokemon, and then we can win and get around that whole like stop sign Oricorio. So I like Repel for that instance. However, Sabrina's better because it just forces out anything. This only works on basic Pokemon. We also have Disruption in the means of red card and a little bit of sustain with Erica. And another thing that I really like is that Rocky Helmet. A lot of people don't think about this, but Rocky Helmet adding that extra 20 damage is solid. That turns Pheromosa's damage output to potentially 40 for a single turn. Kartana hits that 60 mark for a single turn if you're going first and you give it just that Rocky Helmet. So all in all, this is a very nice damaging and pivoting deck. And I suspect we're going to keep seeing Buzzwell EX in the top rankings for quite a while. Maybe until set A4, to be honest. Now let's talk about the most consistently strong deck in the format, in the sense where if you don't brick, you're just going to win the game. I don't think there's much your opponents can do once you get Steam Zard going by turn 1, turn 2. There's just nothing they can do. You can stoke and then you just smack them for 150. Nothing is stopping you at that point. However, the issue is if you don't find your rare candy, and if you don't find your Steam Zard, and that's where the draw engine where we're talking about earlier comes in. Remember how I said the first ranked player in ranked, they were running a variation of this deck list. Instead of the Flareon EX, they were running a genetic Apex Flareon, and I imagine that's to counter things like Oricorio. Which if that is the case, I think maybe something like a Torkoal would be better. But either way, we came across this variation today, and I think it makes the most sense outside of Oricorio matchups, having that Flareon EX to be able to just deal 130 damage after your Steam Zard potentially goes down. You're just going to often find yourself winning matches. On top of that, we have Sustain with a Potion and 2 Lilies, which is pretty solid. That's obviously going onto your Steam Zard. The Potion could technically be for your Flareon EX. If it combusts, takes the 20 damage, you could heal yourself, not too bad. But the reason you have the Potion instead of an Eevee bag is because it's flexible. So you can use it for Flareon, but you could also use it for literally anything else. We have a Giant Cape, which goes on Sylveon or potentially Flareon or even your Charizard really, but that gets them out of breakpoints, potentially opposing Charizards. And for Disruption and potentially even game winners, we have Sabrina. This is such a good deck. I actually uploaded a video recently on this deck, and I highly recommend a bunch of people check that video out. This deck list is so good. Again, like I said, the #1 ranked player was running this. I believe Pocket Mads was talking about this before it became super popular. So yeah, this is a very strong deck. Next up is the most spiciest deck, the Leafeon, Sylveon, the Flareon EX. This thing is beautiful. This was one of the top 3 ranked decks when I discovered it, like from the actual player that created it. I was like, this is amazing. The idea is Leafeon EX ramps itself. So you only run fire energy with this. Again, Sylveon, 3rd Professor Research, and Leafeon is there because the Leafeon EX can ramp it and it could come in and knock out potential Oricorios. This thing is just so fully rounded. And on top of that, you have a Flareon EX in the back that can potentially do up to 130 damage. It is a beautiful, beautiful deck. The pivoting, the plays, this really makes Pokemon Pocket. This deck specifically made me feel like there is so much more to Pokemon Pocket than meets the eye, because no one really thought about this collection of cards. Again, one of the top 3 players created this. I retweeted them. I made a video on it. I gave them credit on it. And once they published this and didn't decide to gatekeep, which shout out to them, it started allowing other deck builders to be like, yo, we can get very creative with these different engines, specifically Sylveon. Now Leafeon can go into almost everything since it generates for itself. And then a heavy hitter like Flareon, it's pretty amazing. And then for disruption, we have Mars and Sabrina, the 2 EV bags, and Red to close out games with your 130 going up to 150. So again, very solid. And this is going to be the top 3 in 3rd place for today. Now let's look at the 2nd place deck list in ranked. And in my opinion, it's still Dark Tina. Now I know a lot of you are like, no, what are you talking about? We can shut this down with Oricorio, Steam Zard, yada, yada, yada. You're right. However, I feel like the skill cap between this deck and the other decks are way easier to pilot, right? But I do think with the arsenal of supporter cards like the Double Nurse Joys, the Guzma, the Cyrus, the Mars, the Leaf, the Sabrina, and another red card in a cape, like it's pretty strong. Your Darkrai just sits on the back, snipes them with the extra 20 damage every single turn. It gives an energy. Your Giratina ramps itself, and then Nihilijo's like, yo, you want to hit us? Take toxic damage, take an extra 20. It's pretty toxic, not to say the least. It's not undefeatable, but it is a very consistent, I think, deck in ranked currently. I guess there could be an argument to say like why in 2nd place, maybe it should be in a different place. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. Have you still been seeing a ton of Darkrai Giratina like I have in my matches? Maybe I'm just super unlucky in matchmaking roulette, but you guys let me know in the comments. And now finally, I think the thing we can all agree on is the #1 deck that we're seeing all the time, and honestly winning a bunch, is the Sylveon Giratina EX Greninja. And it's always going to be this deck variant. And the only other 2 variants are, instead of red card, it's a Mars, and instead of another card like a communication, it's an Irida, right? Now, 2 things. A lot of people run this with dual energy, and I do think that is a better way to run this because then you have an aggressive Greninja. However, you could brick, and that is just unfortunate, right? So I tried running it with just pure psychic energy, and it still feels rather good. Now, before I was talking about a different variant, this variation uses the Sylveon EX as an attacker and a draw engine, which makes it very, very strong. However, another deck variant that's doing very well, I don't think runs 2 Sylveons and 2 Eevees, instead runs 1 Oricorio, or maybe even 2 Oricorios, and no psychic energies, and it's water and lightning energy. That way the Giratina can ramp itself, and you have Oricorio to stop the opposing EXs. I guess you can consider it this type of variant and the other type of variant. However, this is the most consistent, the most seen deck in the format currently in tournaments, in ranked, and it's just so good. It's really so good. Like, how are you going to brick when you draw your entire deck by turn 2, turn 3? It's kind of tough, unless your opponent holds their Mars and red card and then just says, hey, all that work you did, send it right back to your deck. But there you guys have it. I hope this video today helped you guys out. These are the top 8 that I think are the best decks in ranked currently for this week. If you want to see what the next week has in store, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Again, let me know in the comments what you think of this video, and be sure to be on the lookout for the top 8 spiciest decks on the ladder. These aren't the best winning or the best placing decks, but these are the spiciest that do rather well. So if you're excited for that, again, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Later.